Welcome everyone at PCR London Valves 2021. My name is Philipp Lurz from Heart Center Leipzig, and I have with me Peter Lüdike from Heart Center Essen. He is presenting a very interesting study at this year's London Valve, looking at the predictability of MR reduction using the PASCAL device. We have quite an experience with the PASCAL device at our center, and to remind ourselves, it is a quite flexible device, nitinol based. And from our experience, it seems that because it is quite flexible, the MR reduction comparing pre to post release seems to be pretty stable. And I understand that that's something you now assess properly.
Yes, completely right. First of all, dear Philipp, thanks for having me here in Leipzig, in the famous Heart Center here in Leipzig. And indeed, after our first experiences with the PASCAL device, we always discussed in peer-to-peer situations that we all have the experience or the feeling that having our experiences or comparing our experiences from the MitraClip era, where we all experience this moment of truth after releasing the device, if the result remains stable, that we wanted to quantify this somehow. And so we conducted a single center retrospective study of the last 100 MitraClip cases we performed before we started with the PASCAL system at our institution. This was a retrospective study. It was non-matched, but also it was non-matched since the PASCAL device was the primarily applied device in our institution from July 2019 onwards. The groups were quite comparable and nearly no significant difference in the patient cohorts. And what we found in this study was when we compared the last 100 MitraClips with the first 100 PASCAL devices, was both devices were able to improve the mitral regurgitation, to obtain excellent results with above 80% of patients with residual MR of 0 or 1 plus, also or already in the MitraClip era. And when we looked especially on the intraprocedural change before and after the release of the device, we could quantify what we already talked about, that in 1/3 of the MitraClip cases, we saw that if there was no MR before, there was a relapse of the MR, or if there was a residual MR, this MR increased, or we observed that there was a significant separate jet after the release, and this was just in 5% of the PASCAL cases. So as we discussed on a lot of meetings, we could quantify in our institution, in our cases, that there might be an influence of the applied device on the predictability of MR reduction before and after release of the respective device.
So in other words, with the PASCAL device, what you see is what you get, right? No further increase in MR. When you compare pre to post release, that seems to be a new feature of devices we use to repair mitral regurgitation. And this is interesting. Could you speculate on the reasons for that? Is it due to less shattering, so we do assess it better on echo? Or is it the more flexible device?
I think it's a bunch of aspects that need to be considered. It's the flexibility of the device. I think it's the nitinol design. It's the fact that you have this spacer in the middle of the device and the alignment of the retention elements. So after release of the device, it's possible that there is somehow an alignment with the anatomy. And I think it has a lot of impact how the device is released from the steering catheter, that the connection mechanism at the PASCAL device is at the bottom of the device, and you don't have to release the screw from the top of the device. There are a lot of a bundle of aspects that need to be considered, and I think it's a lot of learning for the future. What is the final aspect, or if there is just one final aspect?
Fascinating, really very interesting study. We see more and more studies comparing different devices to repair mitral regurgitation. I'd guess we have to be careful when we compare two systems when it's not randomized, but it's certainly very reassuring to hear that with the PASCAL device, and that nicely sort of mirrors our experience, that the result after release is the same or sometimes even better than pre-release, which obviously is something quite reassuring for the users. How important do you think that is for the user?
I think what we are discussing a lot about is when you have upfront one device strategy in a small valve with a small mitral valve opening area, then you must rely on the result you have before release, because you have no chance to put a second device. Or when you plan a upfront two device strategy and start very medial, then you must rely that after release you don't have a new jet after release very medial, because it's challenging to put a second or third device there. So I think it can be added. It's nothing more than a single center experience, but I think it can add it to the planning when you have these specific situations. A clear one device strategy or a two device strategy where medial there is not enough space for a second device.
Excellent. So that was mitral, but we also treat tricuspid regurg with that system. You would expect the same results there?
I would expect the same results there, because I think the mechanism that leads to this alteration of anatomical circumstances might be the same. But at our institution, we have not so much experience to compare these technologies. But I think other centers will investigate this, and it will be interesting to see if it's the same for both sides and to learn from other centers.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for summarizing these results. And please look out for the full presentation and enjoy PCR London Valves 2021. Thank you.